All right, so we've got our entire parallax built here, but what we're going to do in this lesson is we're going to look at a neat little effect called the vertigo effect. Basically, what this is going to do is it's going to either stretch out the perspective in your 3D scene, or it's going to compress it, depending on which direction you decide to go with it. And the way that this works is the same way that it would work in the real world if you were working with real cameras. Basically, as you dolly in, which moves the camera closer to the subject, you zoom out, or the reverse of that, as you dolly out, moving the camera away from the subject, you zoom in. You're just kind of counterbalancing between the two of them. So first thing you need is you need to have your whole 3D scene set up, which we did in the previous lessons. And now what we're going to do is we're going to add in a one-node camera. So I'm going to go up to Layer, New, Camera. Make sure it's set to one node. It's easier to work with one node. We don't need a second node for this. And I'll just leave it camera 1. We'll set the preset to 50 millimeters, which will give us the same view that we're currently seeing. And click OK. So we can see our camera here, and these are our layers. What we're going to do is we'll go ahead and zoom in, and then, or we'll dolly in, moving the camera closer to the scene, and then we'll zoom out as we're doing this. So I'm going to get my position property on my camera. I'll enable my position keyframes at the start. Let's move about, let's say, 2 seconds forward in time. And we're going to move the camera closer to the screen. Now what we want to do is we want to find our zoom property for our camera. So we can either expand the whole layer, or if you double tap A, that'll give you all your camera options. So pressing A twice real quick shows you all these options. And the one that we want to adjust is our zoom. So I'm going to move back to the start of our composition and enable my zoom keyframes. And we want to align these keyframes up with the position of our camera. So the easiest way to make sure we see both of those is once you turn on the zoom keyframes, you can press the letter U on your keyboard, and that'll show you all your keyframe properties. So we can see both zoom and position, and this concentrates it down to just these two properties. I'm going to move forward in time. And I just want to try to zoom out to make it look as close as possible to the original composition. And you can do that just by dragging on this number. If you hold down Shift after you start dragging, you can also drag in larger increments. It drags by tens instead of ones. And that makes it a little bit easier. And this is about what my composition looked like before. And it's going to be a little bit different because it is going to stretch out the perspective some. But that's basically how it looks. And you can see that what happens when we play, I have to let it render first, is that it'll stretch out. So it's like the middle layer isn't really moving that much, and the other two layers are kind of stretching around it, creating what's called the vertigo effect. This got its name for the Alfred Hitchcock movie Vertigo, where it's used to stretch out the staircase and create kind of a disorienting feel, but it's also been used in other films such as Jaws to create kind of a disorienting feel. And if you wanted to reverse the effect, you could just kind of swap your keyframes so that you're going in the opposite direction for each. You could do that by selecting your keyframes, right-click, Keyframe Assistant, Time Reverse Keyframes, and you just want to do that for both properties. Keyframe Assistant, Time Reverse Keyframes. It'll do the same thing just in reverse, so that instead of extending the perspective, it's going to squash it. We'll wait for it to loop around again. So this isn't something you want to use with every single project you're working on, but if you want to create a disorienting effect, or if you, say, want to show a hallway stretching out because maybe the main character is running down it and want to make it look longer than it actually is, this is a good way to achieve that effect.